Back to another video. This is Ramona. You are on the Smell of Logic channel, where we read Reddit stories and advice and just tales of stuff. We're continuing the what is the scariest thing a kid has said to you. This is going to be part 2, I do believe. But if you're interested in like coloring and stuff, just this is a weird little thing, but I produce coloring books over on Amazon.com once a week, starting on Monday, or they get released every Monday. So if you or you know someone who likes to color just to relax or stress relief, or you're bored as fuck, go check those out. I keep them as low pricely as I can, because, you know, I want to. Anyway, here we go. Ready? First story is, when I was around 3 years old, my mom heard me talking in my playroom, and it was just the two of us at home. I was a very quiet kid, never talked to myself, and didn't have any imaginary friends prior to this. She walked in and asked what I was doing, and I responded, playing catch with Billy. She then asked me who Billy was, knowing I had never even known anyone named Billy. The little girl who lives out on the deck, I told her. So she asked me what Billy looked like, and I said she has long hair, a long dress, and she's all white, I said. My mom said that she was too scared to say anything else, and just continued letting me play. I had lots of things like that happen when I was little, and for the first 6 years of my life. I also had extremely vivid alien dreams and sleepwalked almost every night. I lived in a house that was on Ghost Hunters. It was on the show shortly before I moved out. It's not like I knew it was haunted, and that's why this freaked me out. When I was living there, my dad's girlfriend had a 4-year-old daughter who lived with us too. The one night when I was babysitting her, she was drawing, and after an hour she had a stack of drawings, all of a man with a skeleton key. When I asked her who the pictures were of, she said, "It's the ghost man who lives here." I then asked her what she was holding. She said, "The key to the door," and points to the front door. This freaked me the F out. Throw away, because this touches on some things that are fairly personal. Here's some needed backstory. When I was a teen, I had some nightmares. At least I really hope that they were nightmares. The event I'm describing will explain why I'm not sure about that. These nightmares were broken up in weird ways, as nightmares often are, but they were of me being abducted by aliens. I always brushed them off as a product of my imagination. Fast forward 11 years. I have 2 children. I have never, and still haven't ever spoken about these nightmares where the children might overhear. Only at home, while they were gone, only with a small select group of people. Last summer, not the one we just got out of, my son was 4, and I started having nightmares like that again, but I wasn't telling anyone. This was in June. The nightmares hadn't stopped by mid-July. In fact, they were more frequent and longer, and I was waking up with bruises. I figured it was just me thrashing around in my sleep, so I decided it was time to set up a counseling appointment. That night, my girlfriend and I were putting the kids to bed, and my son looks at his mom while I was standing in the doorway. I assume he didn't realize that I had entirely left the room, and due to the angle he couldn't see me, and this conversation happens. Him: "Mommy, tell Daddy he'll be okay." Her: "What do you mean? Daddy's fine." Him: "But Daddy's worried that they'll come in their spaceship and take him. We might not come back." At this point, I started to have an anxiety attack, but I kept listening. Her: "Wait, so you're talking about aliens?" Him: "Yeah, but they like to be called planet strangers." Her: "Oh, is that so?" Him: "Uh-huh. But they said not to worry. They promised they would bring Daddy back after they brought him up to their spaceship, and that they wouldn't hurt him." Her: "Okay then, you sleep good, little man." Her and I stepped into the backyard, and she was smiling, thinking the whole thing was funny, until she noticed that I was visibly shaken. She asked me what was wrong, and I explained that I had been having those nightmares again for over a month. That was the most terrifying thing a child has ever said to me, ever. Wow, that's frightening. Yeah, that's really, really disturbing. There's a reply here. Abduction seems to be fairly common and unfortunately a reality, because the evidence people such as yourself are quite overwhelming once you accept the truth. I wouldn't assume anything about them, though. You yourself feel uneasy about the situation, yet it seems you're inclined to think that they are harmless. I don't have any answers for you, but they are on their own duty to bring about, and I wish you all the best as a fellow human brother. Genuinely, I know these experiences are felt at your very core. I will recommend Allies of Humanity, a book, for the time you are inevitably chosen to pursue a greater truth. My aunt always talks about how when my cousin was very young, probably around a year old, there was some crazy shit going on in the house at that time. But one night he sat straight up, pointed at her with his index finger, and said in the most evil voice, "I'm going to scramble you like eggs," and then laid back down and went to sleep. Yeah, that's a bit much. I work with kids, so I hear things every now and then. Just last month, some kid was like, "James, your friend looks like the guy who cries in my room after my mom puts me to bed." But this morning, some kid was talking to no one in particular. She said to someone who supposedly was in front of her, "No, you can't do that. It's against the rules. Stop. No, do it like this." I said stop. "If you do it, I won't talk to you anymore." Then she starts crying. This one actually made me quite sad. My niece and I always play hide and seek, and I'm going to gobble the bug up. I don't know what that is, but it's a cute little sounding game. Whenever I go visit my sister. She used to love this game, and she always chose the same hiding spot in the closet next to the door where my sister kept her wrapping paper and coats. I would search for a few minutes before finally getting into the closet. And since she was only 2 and quite short, I would always look over her head and pretend not to notice her. After that, she would leave the closet and sneak up on me to gobble me up instead. The last time we played this game, she was in her usual hiding spot, and I guess she had managed to shut the door all the way. She would usually leave it cracked open so she could watch me search through the house and giggle. I noticed the door was shut all the way, and I figured she was just getting more brave, and continued with my search, being more audible with my "Where is the little bug?" Or "When I find you, I'm going to eat you with gravy." Then I hear her little hands banging on the other side of the door. I hear her crying and screaming, "Ah, Beggy! Ah, Beggy!" This is her way of saying Aunt Becky. I go and open the door and grab her up. She's in hysterics, which I assume is from the dark and the door having been shut all the way. I ask her if she's okay, and she points to the closet and says, "No. Bad man, stay." She will not go near the closet, and neither will I. We still play the game, but her new hiding spot is in the shower when the bathroom light is on. That's, a little creepy. One night, while my little sister was about 4, it was just my mom, her, and I home. Her room is on the top of our staircase, and we keep the door open in case she needs anything. She starts crying in the middle of the night, and when my mom went to see what was wrong, my little sister said, "Who is the man that just walked down the stairs?" I was visiting family in winter break in Los Angeles. This was about 5 years ago. I was heading to the bathroom on the second floor of my aunt's house when I saw my cousin, April, on the stairs. April was 4 and very animated. She was busy making funny faces while sitting on the stairs. I asked her what she was doing. She said, "I'm copying the lady with the braid." I looked around and there was no one else but us. I asked, "Where is this lady, April?" She pointed to a beam running parallel to the stairwell. I asked April, "What is the lady doing?" She said, "Making funny faces." I smiled and started walking up the stairs again when April said something that stopped me in my tracks. "April, her braids are around her neck." I turned back and asked April to repeat herself. April pointed. "The lady is hanging by her braid. She's making funny faces." Then April started to make a face, which I realized that it was someone gasping for air. Yeah, that's a bit much. That's kind of creepy to hear that and to see that, I imagine, for the child. A month or so ago, my younger brother was running downstairs when he should have been sleeping. Before he got to the other side of the room where I was, he started screaming, "I'm dead, Cody, I'm dead." He kept saying this over and over again. I got him to come over to the couch and talk to me. He would just keep repeating, "I'm dead." He started screeching as loud as he could and shaking. I couldn't get him to stop. Finally, he just starts running upstairs. I chased after him to make sure he didn't hurt himself. It took my mom to get him to stop. She said it happened with her the other week, as if it was something that was totally normal. Now, I can't walk up the stairs at night without thinking he's going to just be standing there, waiting, staring, ready to start screaming, at the end of a long, dark hallway. I went on a camping trip with my fraternity brothers involving ziplining as one of the activities. The zipline manager brought her daughter to help out with instructions on the zipline. One of the funnier guys puts on his helmet, pulls up his harness really high, gets up on the ladder, and gets hooked in. The little girl laughs and asks, "What? Do I look weird?" She giggles and responds, "No, you look like you're going to die," and then pushes him off the ladder. The look on his face before he realized he was buckled to the zipline and safe was pure awesome. That's... wow. When my younger brother was about 4 years old, I think, he started talking about voices from our basement. I didn't think much of it because it was very old, and we had tons of deceased great-grandmother's things down there. I had a lot of old pipes that were very noisy. However, last year we took all of our things out and renovated the place, changing the old pipes, painted the room white, and all that good stuff. Yet he tells me he can still hear the voices, even louder now. I was playing with my niece in her room at my brother's house when she got up off the bed and left the room. I followed her and asked her why she wanted to leave the room, and she told me it was because the monster was in there. These little kids were playing in the park and choking each other out. They pretended to black out and proceeded to hit my friend as we were hanging out. We would just push them away and tell them to stop doing what they were doing. The one girl said that every time she touched her, she could see Satan stabbing us. I'm pretty sure we haven't been back to that park since. My friend once told me how she was in the shower one day when she heard the door open. Her 2-year-old daughter had opened the door, put her head in the bathroom, and said, "I'm going to get you," and then closed the door. My friend spent the next few minutes standing in the shower wondering if her child was talking about playing hide-and-seek, or if she was planning something more sinister. So a few months ago I went down to Winnipeg to go to a Sundance. So a day after the Sundance was over, we were having dinner with some family members who lived in Winnipeg. In the middle of the dinner, my kid's cousin, 3 years old, just looked up with a smile on his face, pointed behind my mom, and said my grandma's native name, which he had never heard before, since she lived back in BC. But he kept saying it over and over again. Every time, we asked him what he was talking about. He just had a confused look and said the name again, as in who else would he be talking about? The thing is, my grandma passed away a few months before that happened. It wasn't scary. It just made our heart sink with the hurt of missing her. My cousin's 5-year-old daughter told me, "Sometimes the voices scratch inside my head when they want out." Who's that boy on the stairs? Was that you in the room earlier? Same girl, 3 years old. This isn't scary in the sense of I see dead people, but rather like a smack of reality from the least likely place. I would start by saying I have small disdain for children. I don't know. I guess I was just born without the mom gene. So whenever I'm around kids, I'm awkward. I do, however, have a huge spot in my heart for the mentally disabled. I was working a job in a sports venue fresh out of college. After a couple of years, it became a hellhole. A prison to my aspirations, really. I had major reservations about my coworkers who played terrible jokes on me and made my life hell. In a sales-oriented environment, this was seen as a friendly competition. For me, it was more like harassment and Dante's ninth circle. I would get that horrible feeling in my stomach just getting into my car for the commute to work. Stuck in traffic? No big deal. Just prolonged my entrance to misery. I would get physically ill just pulling into that parking lot every weekday morning. Well, one of our marketing ladies had a few kids, and one of them was sadly born with severe autism. High functioning, but definitely compromised. This kid was about 7 at the time. One day, she brought them into work. We were always very well behaved, so it didn't bother me much. My co-workers had left for lunch, and it was just me doing my work, when the disabled child in question walked into my desk area and found comfort in the spinny chairs. I gave him a smile. Out of nowhere, he asked me what I wanted to be when I was little. Now, normally I would have responded with some bullshit answer like a doctor or a police officer, but I was feeling particularly shitty that day, so I told him the truth. Here is that conversation. Me, lightheartedly. I had no idea when I was your age, but I think I imagined myself doing this. Why? I don't know. Do you like your job? I was kind of shell-shocked. A sudden urge to be honest. No, I'm not very happy here. Then why don't you quit? Me, totally at a loss of my surroundings, said, "Well, I don't know. I guess I don't have an answer for you." "That's silly. You should at least be happy." "Yeah, I guess I should." "What do you want to do instead?" "I want to be an actress." "Then why don't you become an actress?" I don't know." Cue the kid's mom calling him from down the hall to go lunch together. "Bye," the kid said, and I said bye. I spent the rest of the afternoon browsing local community theater advertisements and started applying for auditions. And now I'm an actress, and I'm happy. Something about that kid. It's like he reached down into my soul and said, "Hey, you fucking moron, what are you doing to yourself? You're miserable, and you're going to keep living this pathetic rat race of a life unless you listen to your heart." I owe that kid everything. My girlfriend's little brother pointed and said, "Look, there he is staring at you." I turned to look and didn't see anyone. When I asked him who it was, he replied, "The man with no face." The kid was too young to know who Slender Man is, so now I have an uneasy feeling at her house. My mom told me when I was about when my sister was little, around 4, she would talk about a man who comes and visits her every night. My mom got extremely worried, but then thought maybe she was just being a kid and saying shit. But my sister kept telling different stories about this man, who was really nice, and would come to her window, and she would let him in her room. This was around the same time that my parents were always fighting and got a divorce a year later. The man would come to her room, climb on her fucking walls and ceiling, and talk to her casually about her feelings and whatever was going on in her life that was bothering her. There was a nail in the floorboard that had always been sticking up out of the floor about a half-inch or so. One night, when walking to the window, she stubbed her toe on the nail and it started to bleed. The man gave her a Band-Aid and hammered the nail in. She woke up the next morning with this wound and a Band-Aid on her toe, and even the nail on the floor was still fixed. My sister remembers everything clearly today, and she's 21 now. Edit. Also about 2 years ago, I was at home with my dad and his girlfriend's kids. I had a crucifix on my bed because I had not hung it up yet. Bryce, for I guess that's the age kids start to do this kind of shit, looked at my crucifix and pointed at Jesus and said, "Do you know him?" I said, "Not really, but I do know about him." "Do you know who he is, too?" "Or do you know who he is?" To which he replied, "Yeah, he's my friend. I see him every day. We talk and play with my cars when Sissy doesn't want to." I was at church when I was like 14 or so, and the service was over, and I was waiting for my mom to get out of choir practice so I could go home. There was a group of kids there, and we would all hang out around the playground for an hour or so while our parents were practicing. One of them, named Matthew, who was around 7 or 8 years old, I guess, was one of those kids that's just bouncing off the walls all the time, hitting everyone and being all around unbearable. He was really rude and outright mean to everyone he spoke to, including adults and other superiors of the church. I seriously think he had mental issues, and said a lot of things I remember thinking as being too mature for me as a 14-year-old. I was already irritated by him already that night, and he'd come up behind me and punched me in the spine as hard as he could. I mean, he was just a kid, but the place his fist connected with really hurt, and he had done it with me a lot lately. I'd already reached the end of my fuse. I reacted quickly, turning around and shoving him with medium strength. He wouldn't have fallen down if I wouldn't have accidentally stepped on his foot. We were all in the parking lot next to the playground, and he plopped down flat on his back. I immediately knew I was effed, even before he started crying. He stood up, crying loudly, and between sobs says, "I'm going to kill you one day." It didn't bother me so much at the time. It was just an empty threat, nothing more. But it managed to stick with me this far, sitting in the back of my head. I sometimes fear that my suspicions of him might be true, and that one day in the future he'll just go all out batshit crazy and sneak into my room while I'm sleeping, waking me up just to say, "I told you so," and proceed to slice my throat. But on the bright side, he didn't rat me out for pushing him. Oh yeah, at least there was the bright side. More so funny than scary, but it caught me completely off guard. This girl I was dating had this 7-year-old sister. She was adorable, didn't curse or watch vulgar movies. Parents were strict. Very smart, sometimes soft-spoken, but energetic like any 7-year-old. At a Halloween shop, my girlfriend at the time was looking for her costume, so I was watching her sister while we were looking at masks. She put one on and stood in the middle of the aisle. An older couple walked by, startled for a brief moment, then laughed. She looked at them and giggled, with the mask still on, and said, "I watch you while you sleep." Once I was watching my roughly 6-year-old nephew. He walked up to me and he told me, "I'm going to eat your teeth out." Not a pleasant image. My aunt died when I was only about 7 months old. My mom took me to the funeral, and when the services were over, my mom said I was waving into the air, and she asked me who I was waving at. At that time, I couldn't talk, and I said, "I see Auntie Jo," but then I never talked until I was about 1.5. This may not be creepy, but it creeped me out when my mom told me. It's not so much what the kid said, it's what he did. I work with kids, and one day a 2-year-old was staring, watching the corner of the room. The kid was normally playing around with others or being held. He was staring up at this corner and would go closer and then take steps back. Go closer and take steps back. It was so weird. Me and my sister used to share rooms as a kid, used to share a room as a kids. Blah. One night, my sister was 4 or 5 and me 12. I was reading in my bed after bedtime with a flashlight. I heard a noise, and thinking it was my parents, I immediately turned off the flashlight and got my head out of the covers so I could pretend to be sleeping. That's when I see my sister just standing at the side of my bed. It did not creep me out. I thought she wanted something to say, so I asked her, "Is everything okay?" That's when she starts speaking gibberish or some very funky foreign language for like 30 seconds straight. After that, she goes back to bed and sleeps. Creeps me the F out. Funny thing is, this is not the only time that has happened. That was only the first. Well, there's some creepy stories for you. I hope you've enjoyed these. There's lots of other videos on this channel. Go check them out. Leave a like, maybe subscribe to the channel, leave a comment. Share these with someone you love, or someone you hate, or someone you feel ambivalent about. I'm really not particular. But thanks again for listening and watching, and we'll talk to you later. Bye.